Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where it's nice to see that while Barbenheimer is still the box office headline, it ain't the only one. Enter Denzel. Yes, SAG said Denzel couldn't promote Equalizer 3, but no problem. I mean, first off, Denzel has been resentful of doing press for years now, and the reason he's resentful is that he's had to do it for a very long time, and he feels he's paid his dues. I was, in fact, talking to a friend of mine on Friday about the Equalizer and that Denzel could not promote it, and my friend joked that, half joked, half told the truth, that Denzel has been promoting this type of movie for almost 40 years at this point. You know how you feel about Denzel. And the answer for most people is pretty darn good. Because the Equalizer 3 not only delivered an opening on par with the first two entries, which were pre-pandemic and not during a strike, but for the holiday frame, Denzel nabbed the second biggest opening for Labor Day weekend ever. We'll talk about Labor Day weekend in just a moment. But he got himself back into the 40s when it comes to openings. Sure, it's the 4-day versus the 3-day, but it's got a nice 4 in front of it, and he hasn't been able to do that for a decade. So, looks good on you, Denzel. Looks good on you. Whew! So yeah, Labor Day weekend. Ever since the pandemic forced Disney to roll the dice on this holiday weekend, I've been saying there's box office gold here. But Hollywood still couldn't break their old school thinking of the last weekend of summer, that audiences want to do outdoor activities. They don't want to be stuck in a movie theater. But hello, it's a long weekend. There's plenty of time to be inside and out. So you have a movie to start the summer. They've been doing that for decades. But why not a movie to end the summer? I mean, I think in the past they've tried it with clunkers, but now you add Equalizer 3's success to Shang-Chi's, and you have a pattern. Hollywood loves a pattern. They're like, ooh, it just takes one or two people to roll the dice again and have a risk. Sometimes they do it because they're bold. Sometimes they have no choice. But a risk is a risk. And that's how Hollywood usually moves forward. And then everybody copies that until they run it into the ground and someone else is forced to take a risk, et cetera, et cetera. Two risks, Barbie and Oppenheimer, which of course we'll be revisiting during this episode. So as for Labor Day weekend, I'm telling you, this is a great weekend. And Sony has already nabbed the next one for Craven. Again, they were forced because of the strike to move Craven from October, which was copying the success of Joker and Venom in that spot. Now they're like, all right, I guess we'll take Labor Day. But now they're like, that was a great idea. But after that, the holiday is wide open from then on out. So I wouldn't be surprised if some studios run in and grab Labor Day weekend 2025 and beyond. Yoink, I'd take it. I would take it beforehand. I knew that was a hot weekend. But of course, it also helps, as always, when you release a good movie. Equalizer 3's audience scores are top-notch, and I'm not surprised because I saw the movie myself on Friday with family, and wow, best of the series. Equalizer 3 did not need to go that hard, but I'm so happy that it did. As good as Liam Neeson's first Taken. I would even say better, in fact. Although that also took place in a European city, as you might recall, Paris, I think. But anyway, Liam Neeson's Taken, so long ago, created the older actor actioner trend that now everybody has one. Every actor, and even women have gotten into this. Everybody wants one. It bled over into, Netflix has a whole factory of these things that they're churning out. But they don't always work out, and sometimes they have to go to streaming. It's hard for them to work out in theaters. I mean, even Liam Neeson has run it into the ground, and he started the whole thing. But right now, Keanu and Denzel, both known by just one word, one name, are the only ones still going. And as I said, this one is the best yet. And some would argue John Wick 4 was the best yet. The last third of it was, but I had problems with that movie, as you know. All right, so anyway, it did really well, though, so that's great. But things are so slow right now with the strikes that maybe the Expendables 4, which has been wildly uneven, maybe they might pull a bloody rabbit out of an exploding hat later this month. It's kind of cut from a similar cloth as well. Jason Statham, we were just talking about how he can still sell movie tickets, at least abroad, after the Meg 2, but he's also he's certainly not the same level of Denzel and Keanu. And speaking of stars, I always say, and I continue to say, that Leo and Denzel are the only remaining true movie stars. You can argue with me if you'd like down below in the comments, but I think they are. And look at Denzel's ability to bring in a strong audience across the board for this movie. Impressive! Especially as audiences continue to be fragmented thanks to a lot of specialty programming. We're blaming you, streaming! They're targeting such specific audiences that everybody's separating into their own camps. And as I've said before, that's a real shame because society moves forward when you're exposed to different things, often through entertainment at first. And I would hate to see society lose that. But, Equalizer 3 is not, teaching society anything. But I don't know. Look how everybody came together for this movie. And they should. It's a phenomenal film. So kudos also to Antoine Fuqua, who I've never seen direct like this. I mean, he's always been talented. He can get a Hollywood movie done. But this was inspired. Coppola would be proud with how Fuqua shot on location in Italy. It was like taking a trip to Italy. It was fantastic. And boy, to some degree, I guess Denzel Adam Sandler'd it, right? He's like, you want to pay me $20 million to take a vacation in Italy? My friend also pointed out that he didn't go like on a diet regimen and work out. He didn't change how he looked one iota, but it was still super believable. I mean, I wouldn't cross Denzel. He was fantastic. Some of the dialogue in the movie, so good. So good. All right, other notables this weekend. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had a solid hold despite hitting digital on Friday for the holiday weekend. Have you watched it yet? That's also a very good film. And it did manage to cross the century mark domestic, albeit just barely. But it still did it. A lot of other movies can't say that. And speaking of Ayo Edebiri, her star is blowing up with not just Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and The Bear Season 2, and The Bear got her started in the first place, but LGBT raunchy indie comedy Bottoms, which I'm sure you've seen advertised at this point, as they are spending quite a bit to advertise it on the YouTube. The trailers actually, I think, look quite funny. That thing is doing very well in theaters, but when that gets to digital and then eventually to streaming, it's going to really, I think, do even better. That's interesting to see raunchy films like No Hard Feelings follow a similar path. Now, this has the second best per theater average in the top 10 and very strong critic and audience scores. Edebiri, by the way, was also in this summer's theater camp. Now, while none of these movies are huge hits, the critic and audience scores mean that she's not only gaining fans, but industry attention. Here's hoping that Marvel doesn't ruin it when they add her to the MCU with Thunderbolts. Now I'm scared. But really, a huge deal for Edebiri. While Issa Rae and others have come close, there has not been a black female comedian superstar since Whoopi Goldberg. So it's been a minute. This is very exciting. Edebiri is so talented. Just from the trailers from Bottoms, I'm like, boys, her comedic delivery, gold. She's really good. Hopefully, her management continues to do a good job shaping her career, because so far, very good. That's crucial. That's crucial. A lot of times is what kind of roles can you get, which is why actors will make relationships with filmmakers. You've seen it happen a lot. Emma Stone got a lot of praise for Poor Things in that relationship that she's cultivated over the years. So it's important. It's important. So, I really am excited for Edebiri, though. And yes, Talk to Me. A lot of you are like, when are you going to talk about Talk to Me? Well, here it is. It's one of A24's most successful films ever, as horror continues to blaze a hot trail at the box office. Although, again, here comes Hollywood to overdo it. 5 major horror films are hitting theaters in the next 2 months, right before, up until Halloween. Which of these horror films do you think will thrive and which do you think will flop? Or do you think maybe there might be room for all of them? That seems like a bit much to me. In front of the Equalizer, they played so many horror trailers, it got ridiculous. It was too many. But some people love horror. Are you planning to see all of these in theaters? As for box office losers, I'm sorry, Blue Beetle fans, I liked it too. But that movie ain't gonna make it to the century mark. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles did better, and it's gonna do better. Now, as many of you tweet me that you finally watched The Flash on Max, and you actually agree that it's pretty good, here we have another quality DC movie, and I thought Shazam was not bad. Shazam isn't the level of these 2 films, but Shazam was not as bad as everyone said. So yet another quality DC movie that's being ignored in theaters, because hardcore and casual fans alike have just been burnt too bad by the brand. Can Aquaman 2 bring them back? That seems iffy. Superman Legacy? Will this apathy spread to the Batman 2, even though the first one was a hit? I'm sure these are the kind of questions that keep Zazie and Gunn awake at night. But as for Peter Safran, I suspect he sleeps pretty well. Granted, of course, he blocked vacation pal Zachary Levi's phone number. And Uni had such a good thing going with their B-movie pipeline. It was pumping gold right into their coffers. But now it's clogged after the last voyage of the Demeter and now Strays. Now, speaking of horror films, their next are these B-movies? The new Exorcist, that's the frickin' Exorcist. But as I said, way too many horror films right now. And is Jason Blum marveling himself, right, with too much content? And then also Five Nights at Freddy's, also Jason Blum, is from Universal as well at the end of October. So those are their next two. Maybe Five Nights at Freddy's is definitely a B movie, but that's supposed to be simultaneously on Peacock too, which seems like it's really going to undercut that film. But we'll see if they can get this pipeline unclogged. Okay, let's talk Barbenheimer. There's still plenty to discuss. Now, while Barbie continues to impress, Oppenheimer fans, let's switch it around for you and go with Oppenheimer first today. It's earned it. It might have been a little slower, but it's finally starting to cook. It just passed the ceiling of my prediction, gloat away, with a strong debut in China. Wow, China really loved this movie. I'm curious as to why you think that might be. I know. Let's just leave it at that. So anyway, it gives hope to all the Nolanites who want to see the movie hit $1 billion. That is now a possibility. It's also now Nolan's biggest film outside of his Batman movies, the second highest grossing R-rated movie of all time after Joker worldwide, and Oppenheimer is now the 5th biggest movie of the year domestic and the 3rd worldwide, unseating Guardians of the Galaxy. Woo! Then yes, you are reading that right. Barbie is #1 across the board. Woohoo! Domestic and worldwide, overtaking Super Mario Brothers. But that's not the only thing she's overtaken. Barbie also managed to top the final Harry Potter movie. Remember, we were like, can it be done? It can be done! And Barbie is now Warner Brothers' highest grossing film of all time, period. That's incredible! Oh my goodness. Do they have the self-control and discipline not to announce any sequels or spin-offs until after awards season? Oh, please have them have the discipline. So far, so good. Barbie also surpassed the first Frozen and now is only just about $100 million behind Frozen 2, which is the only movie standing in its way of being the highest grossing female-centric film of all time these are separate categories, a female director involved in any capacity, co-directing, whatever. That's pretty incredible. I don't know if Barbie can make up $100 million difference, but at this point, anything seems to be possible, especially with a very slow fall movie schedule due to the strikes and all the same type of movie. Barbie hitting IMAX September 22nd with new post-credits footage. Will you go one more time? And Warner Brothers being very secretive about that digital release date. They don't want to undercut the film in theaters. It was supposed to be September 5th. Now it's looking like September 12th, but even that seems like a maybe. I suspect that it won't hit digital at this point until after it's in IMAX theater. So we might be looking at October at this point. But whenever it debuts on digital, that night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will have our watch-along, which will be open to all subscribers as long as you have your own copy of the film. Did you pre-order it yet? I did. Now let's head over to streaming, starting with Nielsen for the first week of August. Suits still reigns supreme. At this point, it's getting embarrassing for all current content that nothing can come even close to the show from a very long time ago. The Lincoln Lawyer, though, is really close behind, and that just got renewed for a 3rd season. I don't know how with the strikes going on, but I guess they made a deal with the producers. And Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, despite having already debuted on digital, still made a big splash when it came to Disney Plus at no extra cost, and the same can be said for Super Mario Brothers on Peacock. And there's good old Bluey. Yep, I'm going to talk about Bluey. I tweeted about it earlier this week. When I was off, I finally gave it a whirl, and now I totally get the hype. What a great show! I'm serious. I'm totally serious. I was surprised to see that it focuses so much on the parents, as much as the kids, and the writing is very sharp and very clever. It's more like an animated sitcom than a kids show, in my opinion. I just love it. I think it's great. And there's just so much of it on Disney Plus. That's another reason. It's got the numbers. Because Nielsen continues to do it by minutes instead of dividing for shows. Because Nielsen doesn't have to pay any residuals. As we discussed in a recent live stream, that's why Netflix totally redid their way they calculate shows because they knew the residuals argument was coming. So they took down for minutes and they're like, oh no, we're going to do it by views. So it used to be you just had to watch like the first 30 seconds of a show and they were like, oh, you watched it. And now they might have to pay residuals. They're like, if you don't get to the credits, it doesn't count. Which is so mean. Who gets to the credits, man? I would bet you that the majority of people do not get to the credits. That's just the way people consume content online. All right, which is crazy to me, but that's the way it is. Now, on the originals chart, some fabulous surprises here. Look at the LGBT biblical romance Good Omens, powered by the binge drop of season 2. Another binge drop. You're seeing more and more streaming services experiment altering from show to show between binge and weekly. Netflix isn't doing that, and I think Apple almost exclusively weekly. But for everybody else, I'm appreciating the experimentation. I binged season 2 of Good Omens, which, as I told you, I feel undercut Heartstopper season 2 because they came out so close together and they're similarly themed. But Good Omens ends on quite the cliffhanger, and I was real nervous we weren't going to find out what happened, but these numbers make me feel a lot better. And Prime Video has another hit with weekly show, The Summer I Turned Pretty, which is about midway through its second season here. And so that's great for Prime Video. Those are both Prime Video. And then while I think Hulu probably expected a bit more with its Futurama revival, but this result is okay, especially since I think it just got underway. But looky here. Apple TV finally gets another series into the top 10. I mean, it's top 10 originals, but hey, instead of overall, but besides Ted Lasso, and that is the excellent Hijack. What a show. You're looking for something to watch? Go watch Hijack. Incredible stuff. Which here, it's finally wrapped. Its weekly drop, as I just told you, Apple TV does weekly drops, but you're seeing it pop onto this chart because it wrapped and people are starting to binge it. It's an amazing binge. As a reviewer, as a member of the press, they give me all the episodes in advance, so I get to binge even if you don't. This is a great binge. Might we somehow get a season 2? Good for Idris Elba. I hope so. It's interesting. He produced this show and he revealed that it was part of his first look deal with Apple TV. Remember I told you, first look deals, they pay for your office expenses and for you to have a little bit of money to go and buy the rights to projects and stuff like that, like books and etc. And in exchange, they get first dibs on whatever you come up with. Just like Margot Robbie has a first look deal with Warner Brothers. That turned out real good for them. But this was the only thing that Idris Elba was able to get through his deal with Apple TV. Just one show. But sometimes that's all it takes. I mean, look at all the flops Margot Robbie has had. And now she's back on top because of Barbie. And deservedly so. And deservedly so for Idris Elba. Now, his Apple TV deal is done. And I'm sure they're going to want to renew. Not just because they probably want more Hijack, but because probably everybody else is going to want him now. And he was formerly a big star for Netflix. So he's probably going to not only get another deal, but an even more lucrative deal. So you just got to hang in there. It's very exciting. And it's great to see all these actors take control of their own fate by also being producers. As I've said with Brad Pitt, you got to diversify that portfolio. Take charge of yourself, which I guess, a lot of people in the industry aren't so in a position to be so lucky. And so that's why unions are there to look out for them. So that's why the strike is so important. And there's Peacock's Twisted Metal at the very bottom. But hey, at least it charted, because it's not on this list. Secret Invasion, which had wrapped just the week prior. No binge viewing for that show. Everybody was like, please, let's pretend it never happened. Finally, the movies chart. Again, nothing too exciting going on here. I guess the most interesting thing is that mega theatrical hits, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Super Mario Brothers, did what they were supposed to do. They trickled down from theaters to digital to now subscription video on demand, making a pretty penny the whole way down. And that's Disney this time copying Universal. And Universal's really been a trailblazer in the theatrical digital balancing act. Netflix dominates the rest of the chart, as you can see, with a moderate combo of movies that are, original to old and new theatrical releases from other studios. I mean, these other movies aren't lighting the world on fire, but at least Netflix can be like, we got most of the chart. As for Netflix's own charts, for just last week, One Piece just came out, so I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait a week to get the results on how it performed. Although word is, it's a juggernaut. So that'll have to be next week. But for last week, The Monkey King is still the top movie for the second week in a row. Well, what do you know? Heart of Stone has managed to hold 3 weeks out now, making it another action hit for Netflix. They've gone beyond just the older actioner to just any actor. They'll put any actor in an actioner, even Adam Sandler with the murder mystery movies, and they do great. As I said, action, as I've told you many times, action is an international language, and those movies tend to do quite well globally. And Netflix, of course, the secret to Netflix's success is being a global brand with global production, although that's one of the reasons they don't want to make a deal, because they don't want to have to pay even more people a fair wage. That's horrible. All right, so speaking of Adam Sandler, his Nepo Baby movie isn't as big as his own films, but third place is pretty darn good for trying to launch an acting career for his daughter, who so far has done absolutely nothing. So that's pretty good, and there was really no backlash, so that seems to have actually worked. With shows, the UK's Spanish take on The Long Kiss Goodnight, that's totally what that show is. I was like, what is this show? And I looked at the trailer, and I was like, oh, that's The Long Kiss Goodnight. That was a great movie, which nobody remembers, which is a real shame. Anyway, that did very well, while people are still interested in the tabloid drama of Depp v. Heard. Is there a way through, though, right? Or is tabloid drama a dead end? That's something Harry and Meghan find themselves wondering these days as well. I went there. All right, over on iTunes, Indiana Jones seems to have finally found its audience on digital. Ooh, burn! Where it's just $20. Oh, that's tough. But interestingly, Disney is offering Elemental for just $20 as well, while most new movies are $25 to buy. Discount bin. Who puts their own stuff in the discount bin? But at least it's doing well. At least they're number one and pretty good. That's rough. And a lot of moderate to poor box office movies are also doing quite well on digital, including No Hard Feelings, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 3 animated movies in the top 10, thank you very much, as again, more and more adults get into the genre, and it's not a genre, into the medium. So happy about that. The Meg 2 and The Last Voyage of the Demeter, here it is. So maybe Universal's B-movie pipeline at least has a trickle going. As for this coming week, in theaters, The Nun 2 is the first fall horror movie out of the gate. How will it do? Well, My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3, how did they get a third one? We'll try once again to recapture the magic of the first film from 20 plus years ago. Although I have to say, the second one was such a colossal failure, I don't have high hopes for this new one. No big digital releases, I'm afraid, because Barbie bowed out. Then as for new shows, on Thursday, Star Trek Lower Decks Season 4, wow, time sure does fly. We're like, you blink and turn around and they're on a 4th season. Germany's Dear Child, a thriller miniseries, comes out, and then Netflix's insanely popular Virgin River. Remember, we were like, how is this diamond? It was like Suits from a while ago, but it was current. But anyway, it's another like, how is this doing so well? Well, it's season 5 hits Thursday. And on Friday, I suspect Netflix might have another hit with true crime military series Spy Ops. I'm not a big true crime fan. Sometimes there have been like moments where you know what? I watched the Murdoch murders thing and I was amazed, thanks to body cam footage, like how in the investigation, the real investigation you can be. I was like, this is a game changer for true crime documentaries and reality series. I'm not quite sure how much of this is like footage or reenactments, but I think the military CIA angle sounds pretty sweet. I love that stuff. One of the best books I ever read was The Founding of the CIA. Well, Apple TV starts new series The Changeling, starring Lakeith Stanfield, who is booked and busy these days. Now, sure, Haunted Mansion didn't do well, but he was great in it. He has this, and then The Book of Clarence, which the trailer I just saw in front of Equalizer 3, and I was like, that looks like a lightning rod, but a really interesting one. So I thought that looked pretty cool. So that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And how much longer can Hollywood keep getting rosy box office headlines as the strikes seem to have no end in sight? Especially with the Venice Film Festival it just happened, producing some nice headlines itself and Rotten Tomatoes scores. Especially because they had SAG waivers for some actors, which I still feel is uncool. And then, speaking of uncool, some backstabbing directors who were like, hey man, they were saying, they were trying to say they didn't want to choose sides. They were backing both the studios and the talent. And you're like, really? Really? All right, so what are your thoughts? Share them down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.